Hey everyone, it's Kanoj here, and I'm back with a brand new video. And today I wanted to talk to you about how to filter advice, or at least how I do it. And the reason why I'm making this video is because there's a lot of people online that give advice, and I guess you could put me into that bucket as well. I wouldn't classify myself that just because I'm making these videos for myself, but I'll explain that in a later video if you want me to. But essentially, taking advice can be very, very dangerous, right? If you don't filter it correctly, because there is an impact. So let's talk about it. So, first of all, why should you filter advice? So the reason why you should filter advice is because if you take advice that's bad and you act upon it, you are obviously going to get a negative outcome. However, if you take bad advice and you don't act upon it, you could end up confused when you do take good advice because you don't know which is good advice and which is bad advice. So it's important to filter out it's important to figure out how you can actually filter out the right kind of advice. So how do you do it? Or at least how do I do it? The first step is defining a North Star. And obviously, as part of the videos, we've got the whiteboard as normal. And what this North Star is, this is essentially the goal that you're trying to achieve. So, for example, if it is to get a lean physique, right? And getting very specific on it. So not just a lean physique, but maybe like you say that I want to have a lean body mass. I want to have a lean, like, toned body like Bruce Lee, for example. And I want to weigh X kg, for example. Then that's really specific. You don't have to get that granular, but if you can get granular, then you should. So, because the more granular you get, the better, and the more granular you get, the more clarity you receive, and the more clarity you receive, the easier it is to obtain the thing. And actually, a lot of getting to what you think you want is by identifying what you actually do want. But I'll make a separate video about that in the future. But for now, first of all, identify what you want and get really clear on exactly what you want. You don't have to figure out why you want it, you just have to figure out what you want exactly. The next step is to figure out who you need to know and who you need to talk to in order to get X goal. So, for example, if you wanted that first goal, for example, to have that lean, like, toned body, then you would want to find someone that could teach you how to do it. Now, obviously with the internet, that takes away a lot of abstractions. You don't have to actively go and find someone. You can just watch a YouTube video. But even then, you can still use these techniques. So after you've identified the goal, you need to find someone that has what you have already. So that's the important thing. You need to find someone that has what you have already, or that has what you want, right? So the reason why this is important is because if they've achieved what you want, then you can just follow what they did. That's literally, it's as simple as that. But the next step that goes into the first layer of filtering, right? So imagine you have like 100 people right here, right? That's like 100 random people that could give you advice. Some of them are bodybuilders, some of them are super skinny, some of them are completely are very overweight. Some of them, and a small percentage of them actually have what you want. So that would be like here. But it gets even thinner, because now what you want to do is you want to find someone that has the same context and circumstances as you. So, for example, if you're trying to get that lean physique and you're a vegetarian, for example, right, with these specific requirements, if you find someone who's gone through that process that you have, so maybe they were overweight, they lost all that weight, or maybe they were skinny and they put on weight and put on lean muscle, and they had the vegetarian diet that you have, then you can essentially copy them, like, almost to a T. Because while you can certainly get results by just copying someone who's, gone, why it's definitely better to pick someone that has what you want versus someone who doesn't have what you want. The issue is that if their contexts are not the same, if their circumstances are not the same as yours, then you can't copy their blueprint. And the reason why I'm saying that is because you want to take out as much thought process as you can from this, right? Like if you can take away all of the thinking behind it and you can just execute, then you'll get to what you want a lot faster. But if you have a situation where you've got someone that's giving you advice and they've got what you want, but you can't follow it to a T because, maybe maybe they eat meat, for example, and you're a vegetarian, that doesn't work, right? Because then you have to find alternate source of protein. Like, okay, what do I eat? Now you have to figure that out. And you go through this whole like journey of trying to solve infinite problems just to try to get to where you wanted to go to initially. But if you just take that extra step to filter based on circumstances, then you get a smaller pool of people that can give you advice, like that are qualified to give you advice. But that smaller pool will basically be able to give you actionable insights that you can just copy. And that's how you can essentially filter out the people this is essentially how you can filter out the advice, right? At least filter out the people, right? Now, you will not get this completely perfect because no two people will have the exact same circumstances, right? Like you might have been raised differently, you might have different genetics, you might have different IQ, for example, whatever it is, right? Whatever your goal is and whatever the factors and characteristics that go into that goal, people are going to have different backgrounds and, different characteristics because we're unique individuals, right? So it's not going to be perfect. So that's why you will never get to like one person who gets, you might, but it's very unlikely you'll find that one person who fits every single thing that you have. So you want to get as close as you possibly can to a similar to your circumstances, but you will never get to a perfect circumstance. So now that you've filtered the people, right? Now what do? You just essentially just need to just ask them what their blueprint was, and you just need to copy what they did, essentially, right? If you can't ask their questions, and if it's like if it's online content, for example, then take what you find to be useful, take a small piece of advice and test it out first of all and see if it works for you. Because if it does work for you, then great. If it doesn't work for you, then at least you know, right? And generally speaking, even though I said earlier that you want to copy their process, there is going to be some slight iterations to their process that you're going to be, even though you're going to be trying to copy it exactly as they did it, there's going to be some sort of small tweaks in between into achieving what you want to achieve. Because some things are going to work out for you and other things aren't going to work out for you. When people give advice, generally speaking, I like to be optimistic about this and think that people are well-intentioned, but you have to remember that when someone's giving you advice, it's advice that worked for them. And it's not the case that in every single scenario that their advice is going to work for you. It's just what they think will work, what they're certain worked for them, and what they hope worked for you. So that's why you've got to be really, really careful about filtering for advice. And that's essentially how you can filter it through this 3 steps. So first of all, getting that pool of people who are trying to give you advice, narrowing it down based on the first criteria of people who are, who have what you want, and then filtering it by the second criteria, which is people who have the same context and circumstances that you have. And then finally, you'll end up with some sort of you'll have this narrow pool of advice and you can pick and choose from. So if you have like 1 or 2 people here and they've given you some advice that's a bit conflicting, then you can just take pieces between both, right? Now, the next point I want to make is about to just contradict that last sentence that I just said, and that is to limit the pool of people that you take advice from. Now, everyone loves to give advice, everyone loves to share their opinions because it meets their third human need for significance, because they want to feel important, so that's why they share their advice and opinions all the time. But you want to limit the pool of advice that you take from, especially if you're early, right? Because it can be like in the beginning of this video, I said that if you don't take even if you don't act on someone's advice, but you take multiple pieces of advice, you can get confused. This is exactly what I'm talking about, right? If you have like 10 people who are giving you 10 different pieces of advice, and they're all successful, right? They're all successful. They all have what you want, right? And maybe their circumstances are the same as yours, but they're giving you conflicting advice. You don't know what to pick. You're going to get confused. And when you get confused, you're going to do one of 2 things. Either you're going to A, do nothing, which is like horrible, or B, you're going to end up doing a little bit of what's called advice A, and then you'll stop when it doesn't work. Then you'll do a little bit of advice B when that doesn't work, and then that's like it. And that's basically that's like a hell spiral, because you never get to your North Star. You end up just, you know, you kind of end up wasting time just going back and forth between two different multiple pieces of advice. So you want to limit that as much as possible. So once you've narrowed down your pool, pick one person, follow their advice to a T, and see what happens, or pick and choose what you think works. Or you could at least try things even if you don't think it works, because you don't know anything yet, and you should ignore your instincts for unfamiliar domains. You should see my last video if you're not sure what I'm referring to. But when you've got that one person and you try to take their advice as much as possible and iterate slightly. If it works for you, then great. If it doesn't work for you, move to the next person, right? That's fine. You'll have spent a bit of time. That's fine, but you would have made progress. That's what I'm trying to say. The progress that you would have made is slower than what you will make when you hit the perfect piece of advice that you act on. So if we just quickly draw a graph so I can explain what I mean. So imagine you take advice from person A, your growth is like this. You take advice from person B, your growth is like this. And you take advice from person C, your growth is like this, right? At person A, you got some progress, right? But the gradient of that progress was relatively low. Then you took person B's advice. Instead, you decided to move from person A to person B, and you decided to go, boom. You got the gradient decided to go a little bit higher. Then person C, perfect fit, gradient exponential. And that's pretty much it. That's pretty much it for this video. I realize it's a little bit shorter than normal, but that's pretty much how I filter advice. And this takes practice, like anything. So, just have it in the back of your mind. When someone's giving you advice, you should try to figure out what their underlying intention is first of all, right? If they're actually genuinely trying to help you, or if they're just trying to make themselves feel important. That's the first thing before any of this. But after that, when you've got that pool of, like, let's say 100 people that could give you advice, filter it down based on people who have what you want, and then finally filter it down based on circumstances, and then from there pick one person, take their advice as much as you can, and then see if it works for you. If it does, great, you'll probably make the first ounce of progress there, and then move on to the next person, and then see if you can make more progress, and just compare which you feel you're making more progress with. And then just take piece of advice. And then at the end, what you can end up doing is, after you've heard enough advice and you've not bounced between a billion different pieces of advice, you can piece together your own worldview about how to do XYZ thing in order to achieve the goal that you're after. And that's it. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please drop a comment with any future video suggestions, and drop a like, and please subscribe. And if it's helpful, please share the video. And yeah, that's awesome. Thanks. See you guys next time. Bye.